Hi, welcome to the Forecasting for Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Brie. I'm a doctor of psychology, financial educator, astrologer, and founder of Forecasting for Success, a community of people improving their financial literacy to achieve financial independence. I blend my expertise as a former professor and financial intelligence analyst with the tool of astrology to help break down why you are struggling with specific money habits and the best way to form more intentional responses and choices when it comes to money, especially to help you feel more secure in your financial decisions and improve your money skills for building long-term wealth. Welcome back to the Forecasting for Success podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show because your support really helps me and the show continue to do well. You can also sign up to be a podcast guest at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. The full transcripts of every episode are also posted to my website, and you can find the link in the show notes of each episode, along with other helpful resources, which includes signing up for my free monthly investing masterclass, where I teach the basics of why and how to invest in the stock market, how to invest even when you're paying off debt, and it includes a live question and answer session and free money guide at the end. So click on the link in the show notes to sign up, and I'll see you in the next class. My guest today is Meaghan, who has questions about the gaggle of planets currently transiting her second house, which is the house of values and money. Meaghan is actually experiencing several transits that include the three major pain points of astrology, on top of evolving her personal and professional values. So we have a lot of important information to discuss in this episode. So let's get started. So welcome, Meaghan. Thank you so much for being here today. What would you like a reading about?
Thanks for having me, Brie. So, my biggest question that I would love to hear your feedback and your discernment around is the current transit of all of these planets going back and forth between Pisces and Aries. They're all moving through my second house right now. So, I would love to hear from your perspective what that means for me.
That is very true. It's very crowded right now. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen when it comes to your second house.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to go ahead and keep your exact birth information private and only share that your birthday falls on April 11th. So happy almost solar return, by the way. That's very
Thanks.
exciting. Before we actually get into all the details of your second house, I did just want to take a moment because what really stood out to me when I first looked at your chart was this dichotomy of having no planets in an air sign, but having Aquarius intercepted in your first house. And then this has another layer of having Pluto transiting through Aquarius at the moment. And your first house is really broad. It's one of the largest houses in your chart. So personal evolution is clearly very critical. It's very important for you in this lifetime. And Pluto is really going to take its time transiting through this house for decades to come. So it's like this slow burn of evolving as a person over and over again. So both meaning how you view the world and how you present yourself to a world. This will evolve several times over. So I did want to ask you a question first of since Pluto, it did show up here a few years back because your rising sign is in Capricorn. It's not in Aquarius because obviously that's intercepted, like we said. But have you reached a point yet where you no longer strongly resist changing or evolving? Or has it still been challenging and uncomfortable to recognize or even incorporate new elements of yourself?
Mhm. Such a good question. So I will say that most of my 20s was an absolute storm of change and frustration and not really understanding why nothing seemed to be working out for me,
Hmm.
especially when it came to relationships.
Oh, goodness.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So I think when I had my first astrology reading in 2017, that's when I really
Mm.
started to become aware of what was happening and how the stars were impacting me.
Mm.
And also the fact that as a Taurus moon, I was going to have a hard time with change. It
Ah,
was going to
okay.
feel really uncomfortable to me. So I think that once I began to get comfortable with that part of myself, with that part of my astrology chart, and realize that it was okay for me to feel frustrated, but it didn't necessarily mean that change wasn't still inevitable. So, what was
Mm,
I going to do about it?
right.
That's when I really started to ask myself, what do I need to help me feel grounded and stable throughout all of these shifts and changes that are going to continue to happen so that every time something changes, I'm not feeling like I have to start all over again.
Ah, okay. That's lovely. I'm very happy to hear that actually. And it sounds like that was a perfect time for you to try to understand on another
Hmm.
level what was happening and why this was happening, which again can be very productive because you're right. It's a very soothing, helpful understanding of that there's a purpose and a meaning behind all the shenanigans that are happening. So I'm happy to hear that it has evolved and it's improved for you.
Hmm.
Because I definitely understand, again, it's that Capricorn rising, Aries sun, and like you said, your Taurus moon. So it's quite obvious that you would prefer to do things your own way when it's your own idea, when you decide the time and the place. So
Hmm.
it definitely is very evident that it would be uncomfortable to have such a strong planet like Pluto, especially now in Aquarius, that's really pushing you to do things in unique and even obscure ways that do not feel natural, like at first.
Hmm.
So I thought that you might, how do I want to say this? You might have like a new thought or a new idea come up against the same type of challenge, repeatedly, that this happens over and over again. So having to incorporate more or different Aquarian aspects into who you are and how you meet the world, I can definitely understand how at first that might cause you to feel less comfortable or even fear being taken less seriously in some situations. And I empathize with you as a fellow Aries sun. It's also taken me a long time to embrace the parts of me that are unique and stand out. So, very stereotypical topics like astrology, this lacks efficacy, but it can still mean something and it can still help others, regardless of how serious or not something might be, stereotypically.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to continue to encourage you to be open-minded and to embrace your unique gifts, especially with how talented you are at inspiring others and your capacity to offer others practical advice in very meaningful ways. Because your
Hmm.
ability to authentically show up and provide a unique lived experience that can serve as an example to other people, this is very valuable. And it's definitely beneficial to include like your natural enthusiasm, because this is what inspires others to action. And this is actually a really good time, honestly, for you to be more playful, more experimental with unique or unusual ideas, both personally and professionally. Because in addition to your Pluto transit, you also have Jupiter that's transiting through your fifth house. So, this is why I would encourage you to expand on things that you want to talk about, either privately to evolve personally, like with trusted family or friends, and then also publicly to show up in new ways for your business. So, this is a really great time to try out new creative ideas to see what might be like a one time fun thing versus what you may really enjoy and decide to keep for a little while. So, it can also mean to because Jupiter is in Gemini for this transit, it can also include new ways to communicate with others.
Hmm.
So I would further encourage you to experiment with how you write or how you share information, like online, just to see what may work better that is more respectful and efficient for your time, and also what might be more enjoyable for both you and your audience. So it's
Hmm.
important to remember that not everything will necessarily stick, but that's not the point. The point is the process of being more comfortable with experimenting and just being playful, being open-minded, being open to change, flexibility, things being more comfortable with things being temporary, vice only looking for very long term or serious solutions. And this can be helpful or useful. This can lead to new insights or areas of growth, ways you may not have expected. So
Hmm.
that popped out to me at first, and I just wanted to highlight that before we really get into the all the the overwhelming second house, if you will.
Yes. Yeah, it's so funny that you should say that because I do feel like I have been being given opportunities that I would not necessarily have thought of over the last 6 months, especially professionally. Things that I really enjoy doing, but never would have thought would be something that I would want to do, I guess. And I feel really excited to experiment a lot in my business over the next year, specifically because I'm in a place now where I feel like I have some financial stability in order to be very experimental and to try new streams of income and to try new different types of offers. And I've not really been in that position since I started my business.
Mhm.
And so I feel really excited about the possibilities.
That's awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. And that's going to play into this second house that we're going to get into as well. So this is fantastic that I'm hearing that it's already working. The wheels are already turning for you. That's great news.
Hmm.
Okay, so the current transits. You have Venus, Saturn, Mercury, and the North Node are all conjunct in Pisces, transiting your second house. And they are also conjunct your natal Mercury specifically right now.
Mhm.
And this is also technically conjunct Neptune as well, although it's out of signs and it did just move into Aries. It's currently at its Aries point of 0 degrees and 18 minutes, but it is still technically in conjunction with all of these other planets that we just named. So this is why it is just full of activity at the moment.
Mhm.
I tried to really sit with your chart and really assess what was standing out to me, what seemed the most relevant for right now, for the immediate term. Because obviously, some of these planets are very quick, they'll transit very quickly, and others are going to stick around for a little while. So I
Mhm.
try to really focus on what is impactful and the purpose of why you would have a transit like this. Because since some of these planets are so slow moving, not everyone experiences a second house transit, for example. Not everyone will have Neptune through their second house. So there's obviously a purpose and an intent for this to happen in your lifetime. So that's what I'm going to try to focus my reading on for you.
Love it.
So, like I said, Venus and Mercury are both very zippy. So, within a month, they're already going to have moved on to other houses. And so, planets like this typically signify like an annual checkup, like a health
Hmm.
checkup when it comes to your values and how you communicate your values. And so, that's why we're going to skip those for this reading and just focus on really what it means for Saturn and Neptune to be hanging out here for so long. And I'm also going to skip over the North Node because technically Saturn being here is more relevant for the purposes of your question, meaning it's between the two, it's like a more relevant quote pain point because both Saturn, oh, excuse me, hitting my mic over here. I talk with my hands when I get excited. So both Saturn and the North Node are considered pain points in our charts. But like I said,
Hmm.
we're going to focus on Saturn for your question. So, with Saturn being conjunct your natal Mercury, this does actually help you. It's meant to help you create better systems and structures in order to help other people. So, it's not just for you, it's also so that you can think about and enact better systems and structures for the purposes of helping others. So it is technically a way to level up or expand your ability to coach others and either write or communicate with your audience in actionable ways. So I did want to actually pause for a moment and just ask you if you've had any new ideas lately for how you want to help your clients or new offers that you've been considering for your business.
Hmm. Good question. Well, it's funny. I have an offer that I've had in my offer suite, if you will, for about a year. And I did a lot of beta testing with that offer about a year ago, and I got a lot of great feedback. But since then, I haven't really done a lot with it, mostly because I just really haven't had the time to invest in it. But one of the things that I've been considering over the past couple of weeks in particular is that this offer would be really well suited to be my primary coaching offer,
Nice.
which at this moment it's not.
Okay.
So that is where I am at the moment. I've been kind of feeling like I've been receiving a lot of downloads about how I could structure this particular offer in a more supportive way for me, but also in a more supportive way for people who may consider purchasing or wanting to work with me. And one of the big focuses that I've been trying to kind of complete or think about with my own coach has been streamlining my own services. I have a lot
Mm.
of kind of things here and there, and I really want to kind of, because I'm working in a lot of different places right now, not just in my own personal business, I need I need things to shrink a little bit so that I have the energy to focus on only what is going to be the most important and what is going to get me where I want to go.
That's fantastic. Like I'm really happy to hear that you're already in the mix of this, in the weeds of this, because this is definitely the time to experiment and implement new things just to see what can stick around and genuinely help you and your clients. So that's fantastic that it sounds like you're definitely on track.
I think so.
Excellent. So with what Pluto and Saturn are currently doing in your chart, there can be this element of, let's see, how can I say this? It could be possible that there could be this element of fear of losing control or
Mhm.
fear of you're unable to get down to brass tacks, if you will. So it is important to remember that it is okay to experiment and to learn what works. Because once you know what works, once you've learned what works for you in your business, then you can build a solid foundation and a solid structure to protect what works. Because sometimes it might be an old tendency, it might not be relevant anymore for this point in your life, but it's possible that there may have been this first instinct that would want you to start with the foundation. And then partway through building something, you may have realized that you could have done things a bit differently or things could have been better or more efficient in a different way. So, a part of your evolution is just to be more open or comfortable with experimenting and not viewing the experimentation phase as a failure or something very serious or thinking that every part of the experimenting needs to be hidden and only the perfect finished parts need to be visible. Because one of the takeaways from a Saturn transit like this is just to be easier on yourself and more compassionate to the parts of you that are human. Because we all have flaws, we all evolve and communicate and show up differently in the world. And we evolve what we value in this world, and that's okay. Like that's perfectly normal, and it's not something that needs to be hidden. It doesn't make us lesser than. We're
Mhm.
still whole. We're still whole people, regardless of our evolutionary process, and we all deserve the space to improve ourselves, regardless of the route that we choose to take. So I
Mm.
did just want to encourage you to just be kind to yourself, and hopefully not have anything like this be holding you back during this time.
It's funny you should say that about the evolution of values because I do feel like that has been a theme for me over the past 3 years. So I just got married last year, 6 months
Oh,
ago.
congratulations.
Thank you. And I met my husband 3 years ago. And since meeting him and realizing that we were going to get married and, thinking about starting a family, a lot of my values and priorities have shifted.
Mhm.
I would be considered an older parent if I decided that I was going to have children at this point. And, by quote unquote society standards. And that was something that parenthood was something that I had not necessarily considered for myself for a long time because I didn't have a
Mhm.
partner and I wasn't sure if I would have a partner. And over the past 3 years specifically, my personal priorities as far as what I want my business to do for me have shifted tremendously to support me in thinking about starting a family for the first time.
Ah, yeah, that would definitely change the dynamics. Absolutely. You're still terribly young, in my opinion.
I mean, I agree. But society sometimes makes you really think like you lost it. It's over. You can't reach it anymore. So that's been something that I have also been kind of grappling with is what does it mean to do things differently than other people who are in my community than my own parents. My parents were really young when I was
Mm.
born, very, very, very young compared to the age that I am now. So it's something that I've not seen a lot, people having children later in their 30s. And so it feels in a lot of ways really exciting, but also very overwhelming because I don't necessarily have a guidepost for it.
Yeah, it would feel different if you haven't had any close examples in your life of, quote, older parents, even though I don't believe you're in that category.
Well, thank you.
Because it's becoming more and more common, honestly, for women to wait until they're in their 40s to have children. And obviously, you're not there yet. So I completely understand that, yes, stereotypically, our culture encourages kids as young and early and as quickly and as possible. Thankfully, it is okay for us all to be on our own timelines. And I think it would be exciting for you to do things your own way. So I do think you're on track. You're not late or behind or anything like that. You're definitely on track to live your own chart, your own life in your own way. So hopefully you're embracing that and you're not discouraged by other people's stories. Hopefully you're okay.
I certainly am. I think that there was definitely a little bit of pressure from certain people as soon as we got married. You
Mm.
know, that age-old question of, okay, well, first they ask you when are you getting engaged, then they ask you when are you getting married, then they ask you when you're having children. But thankfully, at least with my family, I feel like I haven't really received a lot of that pressure yet. So it feels like it certainly does feel like my husband and I are living on our own timeline, which is really nice.
Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that. Because yeah, it's your life, it's your timeline, so it's definitely your decision, regardless of other people's opinions.
Definitely.
If we key back into Saturn, it's also checking in not just on your personal values, but also on your money foundations as well. Because with Saturn and Neptune in your second house, they are asking you to organize your finances in a way that works best for you, as well as practice discipline so that you can set your future self up for financial success. So this means focusing on things like paying off debt if you have any debt, ensuring your values are what bring your finances into alignment. So I just wanted to check in with you if you have had any money questions come up within the past year, or are you feeling like you're on the right track for how money is working for you?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, that one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn over the past 6 months has been how do I navigate not only my own personal finances, but now having the finances of two people together,
Mm.
myself and my husband. I think that that is just a new dynamic that I'm trying to learn how to manage. I feel like up until this point, I had a really good foundation for my own self. But now that we are thinking about doing things like we just renovated our home, thinking about having a child, thinking about potentially moving into a larger home in the future or moving, those are all major financial decisions that up to this point were only decisions that I had to ask myself about. And now it's me and him. And that is a very different experience.
Very much. It definitely changes the dynamic to have to share and to compromise because it's not just your values, it's also his values, like your
Mhm.
values as a couple. So it's definitely a commingling and intermingling of prioritizing values because some values are more eminent than others. There's also a timeline when it comes to certain things.
Mhm.
If we drill down into the mundaneness of the money for a minute, do you have any questions about sinking funds or emergency funds or other things that you might need to action in the present in order to be ready for something in the future?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, are there questions that people typically ask you?
Yeah, so whenever obviously a lot of people do come to me and it just happens to be a lot of these second house transits because it's this dichotomy of you don't know what you don't know. So some people are
Yeah.
just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to begin or what to ask. And then other people have really specific money questions. So they're like, I have an old 401k. I don't know what to do with this, or my values have changed and I don't like my investments, but I'm not sure where to begin exploring for other investments. And so it honestly just depends on where the person is at and where they're looking to go, where they're looking to take themselves in order to make sure that their current financial needs are being taken care of, that they're taking the right steps in the present, but also knowing that their future self would be grateful that they might have done something a little uncomfortable in the present, because,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes money can be uncomfortable, but they know that in the future they'll be grateful that they took action.
I think that the only thing that I can really think of for myself is that one of the big reasons why I decided to shift into entrepreneurship was so that I could be the owner of my time. Because I felt like previous to that, I was a public school teacher. And so I really had no ownership over my time. And then even working in corporate, I still felt like there was not as much autonomy as I would have liked. And lately, one of the big things that I have been thinking about is what it would look like to be a part-time worker and or someone who does not bring in money at all for the family, but just stays home and takes care of children.
Mhm.
And as a person who is very independent and not used to relying on financial support from another person, that can feel very scary to me.
Yeah.
I've thought about, what does that look like for me as far as the types of choices I should make, whether I should stop working altogether or if I should consider some sort of, flexible part-time work. So I guess that's kind of like where I am at the moment, where, that's like kind of my next biggest decision, I think.
Yeah, and that's an important one because, again, with your Aries sun, it would not feel good to be wholly dependent on another person, especially
No.
financially. That's not
Mhm.
innate. That's not comfortable for you. And
Mm-mm.
I agree. Um, are you thinking of setting up your business to be more passive? That way you could only
Yeah.
sporadically check in with the business, and then that way you still have your own business. It's you don't answer to anyone, but it's still bringing in income. Because even a passive offer to clients, it can be consistent income, even if you're not actively doing something each day. So I
hmm
just wanted to ask, is that what you're trying to transition to see if that would work for you?
I think so. So I have I have an online course. Actually, I have two online courses right now that are fairly passive, but I'm not getting a lot of traction, mostly because I really haven't had the time to really sit down and think about how to market them to people,
Mhm.
so that, I'm consistently bringing in new clients and, a new, bigger, better audience. I shouldn't say better, right? Everybody's great. I love my audience.
Just more,
Yeah.
more of the same.
More people,
Yes.
more beautiful people, just like the ones that I have right now. But I think the other thing that I would still like to keep space for is my membership community. I started that about a year ago and it doesn't take up a lot of my time. And honestly, it doesn't really take a lot of energy either because I know how to run a membership community really well. I've done it for other people. And so I think between those two things, that feels like a really great direction to go, but definitely the passive income is something that I don't really know a lot about, and I'm certainly looking for more resources around how to make that a more productive and beneficial part of my business.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I think what I've heard from other business owners is that they they do three things actually, is that they have blogs that answer common questions that will keep cycling new eyes onto their offers. They have Pinterest posts, and the Pinterest posts do the same thing. It's very similar to blogs. It keeps new eyes coming to your offers. And the third thing is to produce content that can also be recycled very easily.
Mm.
That way, you're able to throw up things on Instagram, for example, and If you need to, just update the wording, if you will, but at least it's the same type of video or the same type of, what do you call them? The little squares, the slides.
Carousels.
Thank you, carousels. I'm not very good with the social media, as you can tell. I'm an older millennial. Yeah, the carousels again can be updated over time. So I have heard this from other women who are just starting out their families, and this has worked for them because you're right. You might assume you'd have time to update something, and then, something very chaotic and sudden happens. And so at least this is an easy button. It's something quick and simple in order to remain fresh, remain up to date on the internet. So again,
Hmm.
you continue to draw on new clients without having to spend a lot of time doing things from scratch that you won't really have time for in the early years of childhood. So I think that's it for that question. Did you have any more thoughts on it before we get back into your chart?
So I would love to hear more about your thoughts about Saturn moving through the second house because that can sometimes be a scary transit for people as far as people being concerned about restriction, like a restriction of resources. So I'm not sure if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, you're right. Saturn is usually scary for people. The internet has not helped with this myth. Saturn does ask a lot from us because it is a pain point. It's one of the three main points that really asks us to evolve in our lifetimes.
Hmm.
You do have your natal Jupiter in your second house, which typically would encourage expansion of values and resources and money and creativity as well. But because your natal Jupiter is square your natal Saturn, it means that you can also struggle with how much is enough versus not enough. So it can be challenging to have proportion or balance to your needs and how you respond to things at times.
Hmm.
So it's like life can routinely test you on your choices and how to put your life together, especially when it comes to not just your values, but whether you're willing to maintain boundaries around your values. And when we speak of values, it's things like loyalty and self discipline, things like this. So when it comes to values like this and your boundaries, and then we also start getting money involved, it can also cause, let's see, how can I word this? Like when it comes to money, Jupiter can expand the capacity to attract money, but then that Saturn square can be a bit of a buzzkill because it is restricting Jupiter and Jupiter's capacity and kind of popping up right before something happens and then reminding you of your responsibilities before you can technically reach your full potential. And
Hmm.
so that's what I see when it comes to this aspect of your natal Jupiter being square to your natal Saturn and then transiting Saturn being in there right on top of it. I definitely can see how that can be a bit of a buzzkill because you're constantly being confronted with the baby steps and the responsibilities and the mundaneness. And so I can see how that could also be a challenge to have ideas and to have creativity, but then to be pulled down to reality
Hmm.
a little too soon to where you don't really get to have your head in the clouds and to have these robust moments of creativity and ideas and daydreaming because you're constantly being pulled back down to earth and being asked the hard questions of, okay, well, how will you make this happen? What do you need to do? Like, are you being responsible enough? Are you ready enough? Are you ready at this time? And so I think that is how I would answer your question is that you can I think what I'm seeing right now is that you're getting ready to spread your wings and then fly. And then Saturn comes along and trips you and wants to like ask you one more time, are you sure? Are you really sure? So
Hmm.
I think that's what I'm seeing at the moment.
That really resonates with me. I was probably about a month ago at this point, or maybe 6 months or 6 weeks ago. I was presented with a couple of opportunities to make some major shifts in the way that I was doing things professionally. And it seemed, one of them in particular seemed like it was the answer to quote unquote all of my prayers.
Oh no.
But I knew better, right? Because of everything that was happening in the
Oh no.
sky. I kept thinking to myself, I don't know about this. Like, I think I need to just be very cautious. And sure enough, that particular thing was kind of pulled out from underneath me. And so when that happened, I felt like I was prepared because I hadn't allowed myself to really get too excited about it. But there were, I mean, there were also some red flags and that sort of thing. So, it wasn't just like a black and white type of answer. But the past couple of weeks in particular, between the two eclipses, I felt like they were major growth periods for me as far as really leaning into my values and my boundaries and being given two big tests about whether or not I really wanted what I said I wanted.
Ah, okay. That's a big deal. Yeah, that's a big deal to truly be honest with yourself that this is it and that you're willing to fight for it. That
Hmm.
that's a really good question.
Hmm.
I think what I usually encourage people with an aspect like this in their natal chart is to like yes, be honest with yourself about what you really want and try to remember not to do something for spite, not to like double down just because you're frustrated and just want to prove that you're capable. It's to do what you said. Be very sure that this is what you want and have a plan B. So it's not really the best aspect to just throw caution to the wind and just hope that everything will work out somehow very, abstractly in the end, everything will come together. It's not really one of those laissez-faire aspects. It really is proving to Saturn that you've done the work or that you're willing to do the work, that you have concrete, mundane, clearly laid out steps of what you're going to do and what you're going to action in order to get to your goal, to reach your goal. And then in addition to that, come up with a plan B. And so typically, if you can show Saturn, prove to the universe that this is what you're capable of, typically it'll tone down the harshness, the really harsh aspects of having a Saturn transit or a Saturn placement like this. So that's typically the advice that I try to give others whenever they're really concerned or have very specific challenges with
Mhm.
Saturn in this way.
And as a person who has Saturn as the ruler of my chart, how does that influence these aspects?
Yeah, it definitely is how you see the world. And it's it can provide a level of pessimism. And you do have to be careful with having that not also ramp up unnecessarily, because there's a time and a place for that type of worldview. And so it is just important to understand that there are other ways of doing things and to not have the Eeyore vibe to where you have an idea and then just immediately you try to talk yourself out of it, to where you're like, nah, like life is hard, everything sucks, nothing ever works out. Like you don't want to do that.
That's so funny. I loved Eeyore so much when I was little. I guess now I know why.
Yes. He's one of the spirit animals of a Capricorn.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, so that's what I would say with having it be right there, like you said, at the forefront of your chart. Is just to remember that there's a time and a place for realism and to not let the pessimism just run rampant or talk you out of things that are possible and that you are capable of. So it's just having, again, finding that balance in life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about Neptune.
Let's do it. Let's skip to Neptune. Because with Neptune being conjunct your natal Mercury, what this can cause is it can cause you to have moments to where you may feel more anxious actually, or otherwise have a hard time focusing. So this could cause you to be more prone to daydreaming or fixating on something, which is probably unusual for you to fixate on something very abstract because let's see, how do I want to say this? The purpose of this period of illusion. What the point of a transit like this is, it's trying to help you learn how to be more direct and succinct. So I think it comes back to communication. Again, the point of learning to be more direct and succinct with something like communication style, it's to help you identify any type of language or thought processes that are convoluted or even passive aggressive. It's trying to help you clean up this language. It's often highlighted during a transit like this with Neptune being conjunct your natal Mercury, because when you learn how to say what you mean more clearly, it also helps you maintain a boundary around your needs in a more realistic and helpful way. It's about learning how to take responsibility for your words and also protect yourself by holding that boundary and not allowing others to either attempt to manipulate you or erode your needs to benefit themselves.
Mm.
So, some people might experience higher levels of miscommunication during this transit. And then that would point to them needing to work more on improving having clearer communication. And others might be more on the other side of the spectrum to where they experience more challenges to communication boundaries. So, where you fall on that spectrum, it depends where you need more growth on either being more direct and clear and succinct with your language or holding boundaries around what you want to say and not having anyone walk you back. Because if you have a message, if you have a point of what you're trying to get across, it's not okay for someone to try to walk back your thoughts, walk back your beliefs, or walk back what you've said. So again, it is this spectrum, and each person falls along that spectrum, differently.
Mm. That's so interesting because my natal Mercury is in Pisces. And so I feel like in general, I already sometimes have a harder time communicating what I'm thinking with other people because sometimes it can feel really abstract.
Sure.
Like I know what I want to say, but when I say it, it doesn't necessarily fully make sense to
Oh,
everyone.
very much. Yeah, that's very common with that placement. Yep.
But I also am an Aries sun, and so I feel like that fire and directness, and even like Mars and Capricorn, right? Like there's this sense of I have a lot of very opposite influences in my own chart. And I think that that was certainly something that I struggled with when I was young. Boundaries
Sure.
around communication, especially, well, and even especially like at the very beginning of my business, boundaries around communication as far as when people could contact me, when clients could have access to me. But I do feel like it's gotten a lot better recently. I think one of the things that's interestingly been popping up for me recently has been the way that people communicate with me on social media.
Okay.
So I have received for the first time, I had a post on Threads go totally viral, and it wasn't even something to do with my business. I
Nice.
wrote something about PBS.
Oh,
Like, yeah, which I guess is a
important,
hot topic right now.
important, but random. Yes.
And it was not the first time, but one of the first times that I ever experienced people kind of trolling me. And what I noticed is that I had a much easier time blocking those people and not allowing their energy and their influence to invade my own personal space in a way that I had experienced. Like it was just totally different than what I had experienced in the past.
Good.
As far as typically when I have that confrontational type of experience, especially when I'm communicating with another person, I tend to completely lose my mind and just spiral out of control and just feel like a complete failure or take
Mhm.
it very personally. And I do remember very distinctly, I think it was last week when I made this post, feeling proud of myself for laughing at the person who made the comment rather than allowing what they had said to, rather than taking it personally.
I'm very happy to hear that. Very happy because that can take some time to learn that you never know what the other person is going through. And on top of that, we also have bots. So it might not even actually be a real person that's saying something stupid on the internet. So I'm really happy to hear that you were able to step back, not take it personally, and just block them because that is the right answer. It's rare that discourse on the internet that anything would come from that. There's so many people, unfortunately, that are just unhappy with themselves or going through something and they say very flippant, mean things on the internet. And there's no getting through to them. There's no changing their mind or anything. It's a complete waste of your time and your energy and your resources. So I'm very happy to hear that you did not internalize it because again, what people are thinking and saying, it has nothing to do with you. They're very often just projecting. So I'm happy
Mhm.
to hear that you're okay.
Yeah. And I do really credit that to the work that I've done over the last, I mean, so 10 years ago, well, not 10, probably 8 years ago, I started working for a company that specialized in emotional intelligence and social emotional learning.
Oh, wow.
And so through working for that company, I was able to really begin to cultivate those own skills for myself. And I think that that coupled with my work as a yoga teacher, I got my yoga teacher certification in 2019, did a lot of study on yoga philosophy and Buddhism in particular. And I think that all of those things combined have really supported me in being much more compassionate and kind toward my beautiful Mercury and Pisces placement.
That's lovely. That's lovely. I'm so happy that that's the way that you phrased it too, that your immense capacity for compassion would be for your benefit instead of you trying to, help others or identify suffering in others because it's one thing to do that in person with someone that you trust and know means well. It's a different thing entirely for just random strangers. Like your capacity for that, again, should be focused on you and your immediate loved ones and everyone else that are just random strangers out there in the world. We wish them well, but it's not
Mm.
something that you personally have to take on. So I'm very happy to hear that.
And I should also say that I know that Mercury technically is in fall in Pisces, but I've not necessarily ever felt like it was a detriment for me. I am also a professionally trained musician as well. And so when I learned that people who have that Mercury and Pisces placement can be really talented musicians,
Oh, yeah.
that, or, that could be a major influence on choosing that career path, it made me feel really special.
Yeah, and it should, because you're right. You can pull emotions from the ether. Like you're able to get that across in a way that others without that placement would struggle to or would communicate that in just a different way.
Hmm.
So absolutely that would play to a benefit when it comes to music. And again, just even in non-musical aspects, your ability to communicate emotion would come across very sincerely and in a very real and tangible way that other types of Mercury placements are unable to. So I agree with you. It's not necessarily negative, it's just how you use it. And you're
Hmm.
right, early on, it might be challenging to find words to what you're feeling. That can be complicated. And depending upon other placements, people can struggle with that more than others. But because you have so much fire and earth, it would be less of a struggle for you. Like you're gonna find a way.
Hmm.
So I agree with you. Later on at this stage in your life, it would be more efficient. You could do that much more quickly. If what you're feeling, you're seeing, you know now how to get that across into others.
Hmm.
Yeah. I did want to say that one last layer to these transits is that your natal Mercury is square to your natal Uranus. So that means that all of these transiting planets are also square to your natal Uranus. There's a lot of confusion and illusion, if you will, because we've got this play of both Neptune and Uranus going on. So it can add a layer of frustration at times because maybe wanting to make improvements or changes quickly. Because when Uranus is square to Saturn, for instance, things can unexpectedly change or unexpectedly be restricted. And the reasons may not always be clear. So not only are you restricted, why you're restricted is not clear to you. So it adds this layer of frustration of, I can't do something, but I don't know why I can't do something. Because if you knew why, maybe you could fix it. And so it's just a lot of messiness, a lot of nebulous ambiguity that could be going on at certain times right now for you. So the way to get through a time like this, one of the purposes to these very convoluted transits or convoluted experiences that you're having, it's teaching you and asking you to learn to be more open-minded, to be more flexible, and to be more patient.
Mm,
It's about remembering not to rush yourself or to try to force change. Again, not for spite, not to try to force something just because you know that you're capable of forcing something or forcing speed. It's not a time to force rapid quickness either. So it's more of a time to practice being adaptable and flexible. And also to remember, I guess, the earth aspects that you have. So it's about remembering just to take a breath and to ground yourself before either communicating or making decisions as well.
mm,
So it's just a time to be intentional about where real limitations lie versus challenges that are presenting themselves to you as opportunities. So
mm,
the transits that you're experiencing, they're asking you to reassess what is truly no longer in your best interest in a very practical and realistic way versus solely using your intuition to make decisions. So, again, try to feel it in your body about what feels right to you versus what may no longer be comfortable and needs to evolve to help you make really practical decisions about what you need in your present day, as well as for your future self, to set your future self up for success as well.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think a big theme for me that has come up over the last couple of weeks in particular has been, what if I chose me?
Yeah.
That is not something that I typically do. It's kind of hard because I do feel like there is some selfishness that comes with the Aries sun placement, and certainly, I don't ignore my own personal needs, but there is also this pattern that I think a lot of it, for me particularly, has been an environmental experience based on the women in my family of abandoning myself
Mm.
in order to support the needs of others. And I feel like a lot of the decisions that I've had to make over the last month, 6 weeks, have been calling me to ask, what do I want to do? What do I want out of this experience? What will make me happy? What will make me feel like I'm continuing to move in the direction that I want to move in? Yeah, and that's been difficult.
Is part of the difficulty because people have other expectations for you, and you know that your choices are different from those expectations?
Absolutely.
Okay. But you're recognizing that it's your path to choose.
Hmm.
Okay. It really is your life and your decisions on how to live your life.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad to hear that you're acknowledging that there are differences, but you have to stay true to yourself and what you're here to do.
Hmm.
And it's not easy, especially if people are very close to us, because there's, different layers of wanting to make sure our loved ones are happy and not having any disappointment in our relationships. But a temporary disappointment is better than veering off your own path,
Hmm.
because that's much, much harder to correct and overcome. So
Hmm.
I'm happy to hear that you recognize There's always potential for someone to have a very tiny or minor disappointment in the present, but it'll be okay as long as you move ahead on your own path in your own way.
Hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm happy to hear that. Those are actually all the major notes that I have for you whenever it comes to your second house transits and what's happening like right now and what's imminent for the near future. But do you have any other questions that are still there for you about these transits or any new questions that have come up for you?
I guess maybe this is kind of totally different, but one of the things that I have been watching in my own chart, and also kind of trying to observe, what are how am I acting, has been Chiron crossing my natal sun. That's been an interesting transit that is also happening concurrent to all of this other stuff.
That's the third pain point. So that's very funny that you're bringing it up because it's Saturn, North Node, and Chiron.
Chiron.
Yeah. So you're curious what a conjunction means, or you've had something specific happen that you think it is this transit?
Well, I mean, looking at my own chart, obviously this is happening in the very beginning stages of my third house,
Hmm.
which is related to Mercury and related to communication. And so I think that I've been able to identify moments when I feel like I'm experiencing this specific transit, but just because, like, I would love to hear your interpretation, I think is my question, because I know what my own interpretation is, but I think I am the type of person that's always curious to hear from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever I see Chiron conjunct a sun like that, for me, it's asking you to be honest with you, I often recommend people, just because it's your ego, it's your identity. I do often recommend people to work with a licensed therapist during a transit like this because you have to have a safe space
Hmm.
to genuinely sort out early life experiences that are considered traumatic or very painful or otherwise very difficult to process, specifically what might still be causing you blockages or issues in the present day. And pain points like that, very early childhood experiences, it doesn't have to be either trauma with a big T or trauma with a little t. There could be incidents that we may not even consciously be addressing that still cause us challenges in the present day that for whatever reason we just cannot consciously speak to and process on our own in a robust or healthy way. And so that's typically my first go to whenever I see Chiron transiting a natal sun is just to recommend finding again, I understand that that's very difficult, especially in the United States, just because therapy can be very expensive. There are complications to that. But whenever possible, I do recommend to please seek out a licensed therapist that you trust, that you really vibe with, that can help you through something like this because it will serve you for so long. It'll
Hmm.
help you for years to come if you're able to work through something like that during this transit, because you're right, it's nearly conjunct with your sun. And for Aries in particular, it's really important to do something. Like you have to somehow do something about it.
Yeah.
And just thinking things will be better or talking about things being better, it's different from actioning things to be better in a new way.
Hmm.
And that's another thing that a therapist can help you with is how do I action wellness? How do I action my well-being? Because again, that's not always evident or very obvious to us when it's ourselves. It might be very obvious if it's somebody else, but we may not come up with the best solution or the most efficient solution to action well being in a way that someone who specializes in that, who's licensed again to do that, is able to do for you.
Hmm. Yeah. That's what I've done. It's just, I mean, obviously, like, being an astrologer and understanding all of these transits and being able to, in some way, shape, and form, kind of prepare myself for what may come has been very reassuring, especially with, I mean, I've had so many major transits over the last 10 years, 8 years,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and can personally say without a doubt that having the ability to soften the blow
Mm.
has made a very massive and intentional difference in my personal growth.
That's lovely. I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very happy for you. That's wonderful.
Thanks. Yeah, so if anyone's doubting astrology, please know that it can make a world of difference, if only to just support you in preparing for things in a way that might just make it just a little tiny bit easier.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, you said that very well. And I also really appreciate that about astrology because it can really help you pinpoint what needs to be addressed at what time.
Hmm.
Because I know a lot of people can just be very conflicted or frustrated and just say, I don't know, something's wrong, but they can't really put words to it. And ironically, it could be more difficult for people depending on, something like their Mercury placement, but they can't quite find the words. And so I really appreciate that about astrology is that you can highlight something for somebody and then they can take it to a person like a therapist and then say, okay, I have an idea. Let's focus on this area. And it can just be more efficient and useful and helpful.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It is one of many tools in my toolbox.
that's excellent. That's awesome. And what's what a thought that came up for me is that it's so important the work that you're doing now. And I'm so happy to hear that you're processing things like this, like a Chiron, transiting your sun, is because you're setting yourself up for better success when you go through other challenging transits. It's like you're making sure that you don't have a backlog, if you will, a backlog of personal evolution, and it softens other things because, in 5+ years, you'll be dealing with things like your Neptune square Neptune or your Uranus oppositions, things like this. And so it's really excellent that you're willing to put the work into yourself and to better yourself now in order to better process and evolve when other things come up for you in the future.
Mm. I thank you. I think that maybe this is my Capricorn rising talking, but I I think that that's the meaning of life, right? What is the meaning of life other than to just continue to make it better for yourself?
Exactly. I totally agree. 100%. That's lovely. Is there anything else I can help you with today or clarify for you?
I think that those are really kind of the big things that are sticking out for me at the moment. And I'm also, as an Aries sun, very excited about my solar return.
Yay. As you should be. Before we go, I actually want to hear more specifically about your business. I would love for you to just get in the weeds about who you are, your expertise, what you offer to others. I want you to go wild. Just share with us who you are and what you do.
Sure. So, hi, my name is Megan. I am, well, let's just say my job title is ever evolving. Right now, I consider myself to be an energetics educator and a business coach. So, I have worked in many different fields over the course of my professional career. I was a teacher. I have a master's degree in education. I was a corporate marketer for an ed tech company, a startup company for a number of years. And in 2019, I decided I wanted to start my own business. I had a massive spiritual awakening between 2017 and 2019. Became a certified astrologer, became a certified yoga teacher, have certifications to teach people about Ayurveda. And so now I love sharing the basics of all of these different types of modalities, how they can support people in making more informed, confident, and compassionate decisions about themselves and their business in particular. I have a membership community where I support people in learning more about these types of modalities and how they can influence the way that they make decisions in their business, called the Venusian Society, which I love. And I also coach people through particularly the lens of astrology, but also I typically use yoga, philosophy, and Ayurveda to help business owners, particularly women solopreneurs, become more acquainted with the cycles of their own personal cycles and how those can influence and support the structures that they build inside their businesses.
That's lovely. That's what I was going to say. So I love the name of your community as well. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And I hope that everyone goes and checks out your offers and your business because it's amazing what you can do for other people.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is a fun conversation.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And enjoy your upcoming birthday trip.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for joining me this week on Forecasting for Success and let you know that you can read the transcript for each podcast episode on my website, which is linked below in the show notes. I've also included the link to send me your money questions if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast at forecastingforsuccess.com/podcast. And if you're ready to get started on improving your financial literacy and developing your own personalized money plan, I encourage you to join my Forecasting for Success community, where I teach you everything you need to know about budgeting, how to choose your retirement number, how to invest in the stock market, and so much more. I go live in the community each month to check in on your progress and help answer any questions you may have. And it's a supportive community where you can also check in with other members and learn from their experiences as well. I hope you take good care of yourself, and I'll talk to you next week.